I recently started looking into an app where you can buy a piece of Michael Jordan's rookie season Bulls jersey. Not like an actual piece, but a share in the jersey, the same way you'd buy a stock. That app is called Collectible, and it's a fractional share investing app built around sports memorabilia. In this video, I will be looking into the app, going over everything from how do they get these pieces of sports history, are the investments actually legit, and how does Collectible make money? Lastly, stick around till the end of the video to see whether or not I decide to buy one of these items. This video is made in partnership with moneymade.io, which is a platform that lets you discover, learn about, and invest in different investments. There will be a link in the description of this video if you want to check it out. So let's start out by looking at the app and how it actually works. So when you first open the app, you can see that it's kind of set up similar to a stock investing app like WeBull or Robinhood. Only instead of investing in stocks, you can invest in sports memorabilia. The first tab that the app opens to is this feed, and on the top left, you can see that this is the featured column of the feed tab. Through here, you can buy items like sports cards, jerseys, more sports cards, and some other interesting things like Muhammad Ali's WBC title belt, and of course, Michael Jordan's game-worn and signed rookie season jersey for the Bulls. Now you'll notice that as I was swiping through here, there really aren't all that many items. You can actually see on the right side of the screen there's probably only 15 to 20 items available for an IPO right now, and half of those say that they're coming soon. This is a very new app, and so right now their selection is still pretty limited. But if I go from the featured tab to the buy tab, I can see items that I can actually buy right now. So for example, right here, here's a Johnny Unitas jersey from the Baltimore Colts. And if I wanted to, I could buy a couple shares in this right now. It looks like they're $10 a share, and I could buy 5 shares right now if I wanted to. Similarly, I could also buy an MVP season glove for Mookie Betts, again for $10 a share. And all of these different offerings are considered an IPO. So when I actually click on one of these items, in the middle here, you notice this offering summary, which shows what percentage of the IPO has been invested. Basically right now for this glove, 58.83% of the outstanding fractional shares have been sold, and once those are all sold, this item will no longer be available for sale through the IPO. If you continue to scroll through this screen, you can see this highlight section here, which just shows some different pictures, including what looks like some proof of authenticity, as well as pictures of him actually wearing the glove during a game. If we again scroll down a little bit more, there's usually this description section which talks about the exact offering. I think this section is pretty interesting, even coming from someone who's not particularly interested in baseball, because it just gives you some historical context for the item. They talk about why the glove is significant, who authenticated it, how they actually obtained this glove, and then at the bottom of most of these listings, I noticed they usually have this section which talk about why this item is highly valued by collectors. I think this might just be their way to kind of pitch you into buying shares in this item, but it is still interesting to read about. For example, they talk about here that Betts' collectability continues to rise, and he was announced as a finalist for the NL MVP, and if he wins, it would probably increase the value of the glove. So even if you're not super familiar with how these items are valued, it can give you some basic background on it. And then finally at the bottom, they just give you a summary of who the athlete is, what they did in their career, and why they're historically significant. Finally at the bottom, you can see some financials, so how much it costs for a share, how many outstanding shares there are, as well as what the market cap is for this item. That's what the value of this item is estimated to be at. Finally at the bottom, you can see some documents here, including authentication. So if I open the authentication, it looks like I can't actually open this file, so that's great. And then if I also go to the legal section, it looks like the legal section is actually coming in. So that's really it as far as buying IPOs. It's a pretty simple setup. When these items are first offered to the public, they call this an IPO. The same way that when a stock is first taken public, it goes public in an initial public offering. These IPOs can be for the entire value of the item, or the original owner of the item can retain some percentage of the equity for him or herself. On their webpage, Collectible says that they do require them to offer at least 40% of the item's equity up for the public. But that being said, I recently saw a jersey for Johnny Unitas of the Baltimore Colts where the original owner retained 70% of the ownership in the item. And in Collectible's FAQ, they do say that this 40% requirement will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. So really, it's not a requirement at all. When an item originally IPOs, you have the ability to buy shares in that item at a preset price that Collectible sets. They are not very clear on how they actually set these initial values, saying Collectible's offerings are priced priced using numerous inputs, including but not limited to recent comparables, testing the waters, independent appraisals, expert opinion, and/or a consignor's willingness to sell. They say that they strive for balance and fairness, but that it's really hard to value these items, which makes sense. But that being said, you really just have to trust their valuation if you're buying into these shares. It doesn't seem like they give you a huge amount of opportunities to verify the value of the item yourself or provide direct reasoning into why they valued a particular item at a particular price. I think that their goal is for this to eventually grow into a large enough platform where they'll have a free market that can set the buying and selling prices. But for now, if you decide to invest in an IPO, you either have to completely trust the price that they set, or you have to be a complete expert in sports memorabilia in order to make sure that you're not getting ripped off. So aside from these item IPOs, the next tab that we need to look at is the trade tab. This tab here is a secondary market which Collectible has recently launched that allows people who own fractional shares in these items to sell or buy these shares from each other. So for example, if I bought 0.1% of Michael Jordan's game-worn Bulls jersey, I could sell that share on this secondary market rather than waiting for the entire item to be sold to some private collector to make my money back. Now there are some limitations on when you can actually do this trading. It's not 24/7. You can actually only make the trades twice a week for 1-hour periods during that time. And then finally, the last tab in this app talks about IPOs that have already been fully funded. So these are IPOs which it's already too late for me to actually invest in. So for example, Emmett Smith right here, Ty Cobb, and unfortunately, Michael Jordan's jersey. This item was already fully funded at $242,000 with 467 individual investors putting their money into this item. So for right now, at least, I am not able to buy a piece of this item. But if you look closely, it does say IPO funded, trading opening soon. So once the secondary market is actually open, I could potentially put in an offer to buy a share of this jersey, and one of those 467 investors could decide to sell that share to me, probably at an increase from what they originally bought it at. Now, all of these screens that I've shown you are only what's shown to me because I've logged into this app before. Now, when I first logged into this app, I was actually given this huge quiz that talked about what kind of sports I was interested in. So I selected football and basketball, what kinds of memorabilia I was interested in, and then they asked me whether or not I was an accredited investor. To be an accredited investor, you have to either have an income of over $200,000 a year or a net worth of over $1 million. Now, since I didn't meet those two criteria, I am not an accredited investor, which means there's limitations on how much money I can put into these items. After that initial question, I had to fill out a decent amount of information on myself, who my employer is, how much money I make, before they finally said that I was allowed to invest 10% of my net worth into these items. So I guess I am not allowed to dump my life savings into Michael Jordan's rookie season Bulls jersey. So if you're like me at all, at this point you probably have some questions. Luckily, Collectible has an FAQ on their website which answered most of these questions for me. One of the questions I had is, why would I buy a share in the item when I could just buy the whole item itself? And their answer, I think, is pretty legitimate. Basically, it's really hard to acquire some of these items. Plus, there's a lot of care that has to be taken to keep them in pristine condition, to keep them from dropping in value. That being said, by splitting this with a whole bunch of other people, you are giving away some of the value to others, which you could have kept for yourself. Another question they answer on here, which I had, is where are they actually keeping these items? Where are they stored? Basically, they say that they're insured and they keep them in a bank vault with state-of-the-art security monitoring and rigorous access control. In that answer is another important point for me, and that's that these items are all fully insured. So even if something happened to the bank account, you'll at least get your initial investment back and you don't have to worry about losing all that money. Another question I had is what kind of fees are associated with buying and selling these kind of securities? So they talk about here that Collectible is committed to keeping costs as low as possible, and then they talk about that there are trading fees associated. So really this doesn't answer my question, but luckily there is information out there that answers this. Basically, there's 3 different areas where Collectible will potentially charge you fees. The first is in the IPO. During the IPO, once an item is fully funded, Collectible essentially accepts a sourcing fee, where it typically gets around 2% of the value in cash and 2% of the equity in the item. The next source of revenue for Collectible is in their secondary market. Anytime you buy or sell shares in the secondary market, you're going to pay a 1% fee to Collectible to make that transaction. Now that is obviously way higher than you would ever see with stocks, but then at the same time, Collectible is the only company that's really doing this right now. So you don't have that much of a choice in terms of avoiding these fees, but it is good to know that those fees are there ahead of time. The last source of potential fees is if there's a buyout. So if somebody comes along and decides to purchase all the equity in the item and the majority of shareholders decide to sell to that person. Well, in this case, you could normally face a dealer fee for Collectible brokering that transaction, but in this case, Collectible says that their equity was already considered in the IPO portion, so they're already going to get a percentage of the value just because they own part of that object. So now going back to the FAQ, there were a couple other questions they talked about. So for example, what if I want to share my asset ahead of time? Well, basically the only way to do this is to go onto their secondary market where you can trade your shares to other users on Collectible. They do note that there's a 90-day lockup period from when you first buy a share to when you're allowed to sell it. Also, you can't trade at all hours of the day. Basically, you can put up a bid or an ask at any time just so that people can see where the market is, but you can only actually execute on those transactions twice a week. Now, another question you might have is, what if you have sports memorabilia and you want to list it on Collectible? Well, they have an answer to that here, and they say that they have a network of specialists and advisors that normally go out and find these items for them, but they do have a consignment tab on their website where I guess you can offer them your item and they might consider it. It seems like unless you can definitively prove that your item has value and you can prove where it came from, they're not going to accept your item based on the chance that it might be valuable. Another question I had is, who can actually invest in these types of assets? Do you have to be an accredited investor, or can just anybody put money into this? Well, basically anybody can put money into this, assuming they're over 18 years old and they live in the United States. Right now it's restricted only to US citizens because you have to have a US social security number to sign up for the site. So the one other thing on this FAQ which I thought was interesting was at the very end they talk about an early access loyalty program. Basically they're trying to incentivize people to use their platform a lot. So if you're considered one of their most loyal users, meaning you often participate in their IPOs, they're going to be more likely to push you exclusive deals and give you access to IPOs earlier than the general public. I could see this potentially causing problems in the future when you have one group of investors who's incentivized to get in as early as possible in order to get all the best deals. But for now, because it's such a small app, I don't know if this is going to have a huge effect on the IPOs. And then we already talked about the different fees that they charge to make money for themselves, but they also have an area on here where they ask, how do you guys make money? And in here they link to an SEC report. Well, I looked into their report and I looked into their most recent semi-annual report back in October of 2020. In this report, they said that as of June 30th, 2020, they had not yet generated any revenues and were not anticipating doing so until 2021, if at all. So as of the time when they made this most recent report, they hadn't actually started doing any IPOs. And so even though they are probably making money on the app now, we won't have any information on how much until they release their next report. So I guess the last thing we should look into is how you actually get your money into the app, because it's a little bit confusing. So if we go to the accounts tab on this app, you can see here that there's this wallet which I can add funds to. I can enter the amount that I want to add. So let's say I wanted to add $100, and then I can also select a payment method. When you add a payment method, you're allowed to add your bank account by linking it through a service called Plaid, which is the same service that apps like Robinhood and Venmo use to do their transactions. You can also go into this linked bank account section here, and there you can add either a credit card or a bank account to pull funds from. Now this is where it gets a little bit confusing. So your linked bank account is actually different from your wallet. In order to buy IPOs, so new items that are being offered, you need to actually link a bank account or add your credit card, and then you can use money from those to buy the IPOs. For the wallet, on the other hand, the wallet is only for secondary trading. So let's say I wanted to buy a share in a jersey from somebody who already had one. I could use the funds in this wallet to do that, but I cannot use these funds to buy shares in an IPO. Why is it set up like that? There's really no good reason as far as I can tell. It's really just because it's a newer app and I don't think they fully built out the functionality yet. On this page, there's also some support links that go to their website. So for example, I could go to their FAQ here, I can go to their about section, and I can also look at their privacy policy here. Overall, this seems like the kind of app where you can have a little bit of play money to put into it, but I would absolutely not invest 10% of my net worth into these items. A, I don't know how much the items are actually worth, and B, this is a very new app that still has some bugs with it, and I don't think I would trust putting that much money into it. That being said, I'm also not in love with sports. There's some people out there whose sports is one of the biggest parts of their lives, and I could see them getting a huge amount of value from being able to say, hey, I own part of this piece of sports history. So you're not going to get rich off of investing in this app, but I think if you're into sports and you'd like to own a piece of sports history, this could be a fun way to do this while potentially making money. Also, because of their early access program, the earlier you get into the app, perhaps the more benefits you'll see later on if this becomes a bigger thing. Now, one last thing, I told you that I would let you know if I ended up buying any shares in any of these IPOs. Well, I wasn't able to buy Michael Jordan's jersey because that was already funded, so I decided to buy one share in Johnny Unitas's 1965 Baltimore Colts jersey. The share price on this was $10, but because I used a credit card for the transaction, it actually cost me $11.49 because there is a processing fee for using your credit card. But now I can say that I own a piece of NFL sports history, so that has a value all on its own. So with that, if you're interested in looking into Collectible, I'll leave a link in the description to the Money Made platform where you can find them. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.